Boker Tov. I woke up this morning and I opened up my Mikras Gedolos. I had a little extra time, and I saw this Kli Yakar, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful piece. And I wanted to share it with you. Maybe it'll be meaningful for you. Maybe you can share it with someone else. So the Kli Yakar asks, Hashem tells Avram Avinu right at the beginning of the Parsha, Kul mitalech ba'aretz, la'arka v'l'rochba. Go throughout the land, its breadth and its length. And then he says, Sa na enecha ureh min hamakom asher ta sham tzafona v'negma v'kedma v'yama. Go, lift up your eyes and see from the place which you see, north and south, west and east, ki et kol ha'aretz asher ta ro'eh lecha atnenu lezarecha ad olam. Because this whole land I'm going to give you forever and ever. So, the question which is bothering the Kli Yakar is, why do you need both of them? What's the purpose behind the commandment for Avram Avinu to go travel the land? And what's the purpose behind the commandment to go look at the land? Shma mina shebariya l'chud sagi v'kanile. So, according to, meaning it seems to be that just looking at the land would be good enough, would be an acquisition. And then, afterwards, it says you have to go throughout the land. So in other words, Kli Yakar is understanding this to be a sort of acquisition of the land. And through seeing the land that actually acquires the land is the Gemara in Bava Kama. In which case, why do you have to walk throughout the land? We need 2 kinyonim. He's referring to the Gemara Baba Kama, Daf Tes, who says that you have to actually acquire the land by walking throughout the land. And looking alone does not acquire the land. And he asks the second question. Originally, God says, I'm going to give your children this land forever, when he tells them to see the land. And then when it comes to walking throughout the land, he only says, to you I'm going to give the land. And he doesn't mention the children. So why is that? Why is it that by seeing it acquires the land for your children, and by walking it doesn't acquire the land forever? Vod Shamer Sana. Kli Yakar asks, why does it say, please lift up your eyes? But when it says, go throughout the land, it doesn't mention, please. But by Moshe, it's switched. By Moshe, it says, go, pass over, and see the land. By going throughout the land, he requests. So going throughout the land, like by Moshe, God has to ask him to do it. But by seeing, he doesn't ask him, please, to do it. So the final question he asks is, why is it necessary to say, and you should see from that place? Obviously, if he's seeing, it's from that place. Where he's going to go to a different place to see, he's in that place, and that's where he's seeing from. So very pshat, precise questions, all great, very good questions. And the Kli Yakar, Kedar Kodesh, he's going to put it all together with a beautiful lesson for us. So it turns out that Hashem wants to give to Avram Avinu the land for 2 reasons. Echad gufani, v'echad iknem iki daish amatzrei. Echad ruchani v'unikne b'riya levad. He wants to acquire it to him on his spiritual level, and that is done through seeing. V'echad gufani v'unikne michi daish amatzrei. And one physically, he wants to acquire us the land, and that is done by walking throughout the land. Spiritually speaking, that place refers to the place where there is a temple below. Which of course is pointed up towards the Beis Hamikdash above. And that's where God planned to, place his Beit HaMikdash, his Makom. Sham Chevyon Uzo Yitbarach, and that's the desire of Hashem. V'chol Mesekel Makom HaKadosh, Hahu Miyad Nitlabesh Ruach Tara Ugdusha. And when you look in that holy place, immediately the spirit of purity and holiness comes upon you. Umelech Elyon B'Yafyo Yitbarach Tachazena Einav. And the king above, in his beauty, looks in his eyes. And by looking alone at Har HaBayis, at the place which Avram calls Hashem Yira'eh, I acquire that place. Ukriba Yir'eh. And there's a reason why the Torah calls it, why Avram Avinu calls it Har Hashem Yir'eh. Hayud B'chirik, V'Yira'eh, Hayud B'terik, Ki D'Kederech Shabal Yira'eh, Kach Bal Yira'ot. In the way in which we look at Har HaBayis, that's the way that God looks at us. That's what the Gemara in Chagiga says. Kimiyad bevo shama kishem shashchina ro'eh oto. Just when you go there, the Shechina looks at you. Kachu ro'eh pnei Shechina, and I actually see the face of the Shechina when I see Har HaBayis. Umiyad naaseh mushpa umu'atzal v'davek b'ziv Shechinato, and immediately you're affected and in a state of dvekus, in the glorious splendor of the Shechina, of God's presence. Barach me'ein olam haba, a taste of the next world. Higam shama tzadikim yoshvim v'ne'anim miziv Shechinato yitbarach. And even there, the tzadikim sit and are getting pleasure from the God's Shechina, which of course the Gemara talks about that as that's what happens in Gan Eden. So Kli Yakar is saying somehow in the Makom of Mikdash, in our world, the tzaddikim are, sitting and getting pleasure out of looking at Hashem. It's me'ein olam haba. Lo b'chol makom be'eretz adam zochel l'shleim etzeh. But you can't say this about any place in the land. Kim b'makom enikra Hashem yireh. Only in the place where God is looking at it. Fu Har HaMoriah u Beit El. And that is Har HaMoriah, which is Beit El. Skip a little bit down. And that's Sana in Echore min hamakom asher tasham. Hore be'etzba sheshleimus u'aruchani yagnikan lo ber'iyah luchud. Lo nikna lo ki min hamakom asher omed bo. You acquire the land of Israel when you look at that specific makom, the makom mikdash. V'anu Beit El ki kach mashma pshat hamikrot v'yilech l'masav mineged ad Beit El. And that's what it says. You went from neged ad Beit El. Zeh shama al eretz asher arecha. And that's what it means, to the land which I will show you. Shani mar'eh otcha shama. In that place, Dafka, I will show you where to go. And because of this, the king in his beauty will look with his eyes. And this spiritual benefit will never be lost from his children. Even when we don't have the Beit HaMikdash. Nonetheless, the Beit HaMikdash above is there forever. And at all times, heavenly blessing falls upon us. And that's why many holy people want to yearn to be in that place. They want to be, they desire their stones. And that's why he wants Avram Avinu to look from that place at Har HaBayis. From that place, from that place, you're going to be zoicha to see the Shechina. And that's why it says, I'm going to give this to you, all your children forever. This shleimus will never be left from you. And then Avram Avinu has to go and walk throughout the land to acquire a physical kinyan on the land of Israel. Land is given to the Jewish people on the condition that they fulfill the mitzvahs, and therefore it's not necessarily given to their children. It's given to their children on the condition that they fulfill the mitzvahs. And this is also what Moshe Rabbeinu said. Ebra means he wants a chelek physically on land. And that you have to physically go throughout the land. But when he wants to look at the land, and that is acquiring a spiritual acquisition of the land. And this is alluded to in the teaching, which Rashi says, I want to see the Levanon, which of course refers to the Beit HaMikdash. This also explains Mashanemar Sana Enecha. Why is it Dafka using a language of please? Dafka ba'oto shleimas t'nikne be'ira. Please acquire it through seeing. But by the physical shleimas, he doesn't request it. By Moshe is the opposite. Hakol chad taimum is fisha shleimas aguvani adam yir aleinam alav bioter. Alkin ena kadosh baruch hu tzarich levakesh min adam l'shon tachanim shikablu miota. God doesn't have to beg you to have a physical shleimus. We want it from God. We want to see the physical. We want to acquire the physical world. But spirituality, the person doesn't naturally desire. A person won't naturally desire it. But God's requesting from us to request spirituality. Eina ela lashon bakasha tchina shebikesh menosh yidbak b'kinyan ruchani zeh. So God's saying, acquire the land spiritually. Avakuma telech ba'aretz k'dei liknot nachlat sadeh v'kerem lo yitzrach levakesh menu. Aval Moshe k'shbikesh al shtayim eli min hakadosh baruch hu yitzker lashon na ba'amrak ebra. Then uknias chelek ba'eretz shateva nichnatz alav v'vakesh al kacha. Aval amar ba'eretz haaretz lo yitzker lashon na ki hakol chataima. Right. Moshe, he requested to have a physical acquisition of the land, so he does use the language of na. But when he went through the So Moshe didn't want to consider himself a tzaddik, so he pretends like he was requesting a physical acquisition. Avram was very humble. Or maybe he was always looking down below because he was so humble. So God says, lift up your eyes. In this moment, you have to look up. Don't be humble, so you can acquire this acquisition of the land of Israel. Okay, we went through the whole Kli Yakar, but the powerful takeaway for me is that just by looking at the Makom HaMikdash, at the Har Bayis, the Kli Yakar is telling us we're acquiring a spiritual acquisition of the land of Israel. And this is a kinyan la'olam in every generation. He says mefurash, not just when we had a Beit HaMikdash. And I would extend, this is a famous story about Rav Kook, when he gets off the boat, and he says that he's looking at the land of Israel, and he's not learning. And his students asked, Rebbe, why aren't you learning? And Rav Kook responded, it says, Eretz asher tamid einei Hashem lakecha bo. God is always looking at the land of Israel. So I want to be like Hashem. I want to look at the land. And maybe, if I'm interpreting that story correctly, Rav Kook is saying that on some level, when I look at the land of Israel with eyes to connect, with my heart open, I also acquire some sort of spiritual acquisition, some sort of fixing, some sort of tikkun, and we accomplish something. And Hashem should bless us to have eyes to connect, eyes to love. Every time we look at the land of Israel, and every time we look at each other. Of course, Rav Shlomo would say that we have to have Mashiach eyes. Every time we look at another Jew, Rabbi Nachman says this clearly, we have to open up our hearts to see the good within them, to raise up the Nekudas Tovos. This is an amazing bracha that Rabbi Nachman and Rav Shlomo teach us. Every time we open up our eyes, we can connect to people and lift them up to a higher level. So the schus of the Kli Yakar, and the schus of Shlomo, and the schus of Cook, the schus of the Eish Kodesh, whose yahrzeit is today, who would always look at every Jew with beautiful, loving eyes. Every person, in fact. We should be zoicha to do beautiful lifting, eye lifting today. Have a great day.